Okay, so depending on what order these have been going up in, this is being recorded after I recorded the Oikawa video. Hence why the Pokemon that are not as they appear and the brick are still here. And the cat flirkin thing. This video is going to be about MaloMyotismon. MaloMyotismon and Venomyotismon, of course, had their own video. But MaloMyotismon gets a separate one because he takes place so many years later, and he, to a degree, also is a little bit more than just he. Yeah, he's around for like 3 or 4 episodes, but um, he's more powerful than Venomyotismon was. So, basic stuff. MaloMyotismon is Myotismon's second mega form. Venomyotismon is the first, and then, of course, the data got absorbed by Oikawa. What ends up happening is, of course, after his form, after Venomyotismon was destroyed by the Digidestins about 3 or so years ago, 3-4 years ago or so, in the real world, his data is then absorbed or assumed, assimilated, whatever, into Oikawa. And what ends up happening is he uses Oikawa's, his depression and his obsession with wanting to get back to the digital world as a way to help him find a way to get back to the digital world. He probably kind of increases Oikawa's intelligence quite a bit, but Oikawa seemed quite intelligent and even before that and everything, because he was like a geneticist and data analyst and things like that. So he seemed to be quite intelligent in and of himself before that. He then uses Oikawa to make Arukenimon and Mummymon, and he whispers in Oikawa's ear the entire time to get Ken to turn into turn into the Digimon Emperor, and he tries to use the control spires as a way to, kind of like redraw the borders of the digital world that would allow Myotismon to enter again. That doesn't work because, of course, the Digidestin, they stop Ken, and then they start destroying all of the control spires. And during that time frame, of course, they've been dealing with Arukenimon and Mummymon, and then, of course, they gather up the Dark Spore children, and we are introduced to MaloMyotismon when the Digidestined Oikawa, Arukenimon, Mummymon, and the Dark Spore children are in the kind of the dream world area. And he explains to, his, giant mouth, as I said in the Oikawa video, giant floating mouth, Rocky Horror Picture Show reference, appears. And he explains that, I've been inside of Oikawa for the past however many years, and I've just been using him like a puppet. And, he looks at Gatomon, Gatomon, recognizes that voice. It's like, I still hear that voice in my nightmares because he put her through so much crap. It wasn't even funny, when she had to work for him. And he then explains that, the dark rings that the Digimon Emperors were, based on your own beloved tail ring. And, I've been using all of this to be able to, make myself return. He then, as I said in the several of the videos, he, then, kind of forces himself out of Oikawa after having drained a bunch more of Oikawa's energy. He then goes through and he drains all of the energy from the dark flowers that were inside of the Dark Spore children, absorbing all of that into himself. We do get a flash of Myotismon / MaloMyotismon kind of returning in the episode where they deal with Blackboard Greymon, and Koi's grandfather is trying to get through to Oikawa, but MaloMyotismon kind of takes over and tries to kill Koi's grandfather, but Blackboard Greymon protects him, of course, as I mentioned in that one, in the Oikawa video and in the Blackboard Greymon video when that one comes out. And what ends up happening is MaloMyotismon, he's absorbed all the power from the dark flowers. He just basically states, there were a means to an end. I needed so many children to gather all this energy from and everything. And now that I've got it, it's fine. I can feed off of it as much as I want. And he ends up, changing into MaloMyotismon, which I'll admit is not a bad design. Looks like a demonic possessed jet engine in all honesty, but it's not a bad design. And what ends up happening is he tries to order Orokenimon and Mummymon to, defeat the Digidestined. But then I don't remember exactly why. I think it's like they fail or something, and he like grabs Orokenimon and he's like looking her in the eye and he's like, show me your greatest fear. And I think it's also like him trying to show off his power to the Digidestined, to Davis and his group, to try to, demoralize them. And he destroys Arukenimon by her own fear. And then Mummymon tries to avenge her, and then he just kills Mummymon. Yeah. Just like, bye. And what ends up happening is he then, he's terrifying the Digidestined, and they're so scared and trembling and everything. And Davis is kind of trying to push past the fear, and he tries to get the others to work with him, but MaloMyotismon then uses his Dark Illusion attack to then put all the Digidestined into their dreams. I went over these for each of them. Kari's is her with the ability, in a world where humans and Digimon live together peacefully. TK is him and his family getting to have a dinner together. Cody's is getting to show his father around the digital world. Yoli is getting to have snacks because her brother and sisters aren't there. And then Ken's is kind of starts as a nightmare, but then it shifts into him getting to have his brother back, have Sam back, and getting to be able to, live with Sam and not have to have his burden of when he was the Digimon Emperor, all the bad things that he did. And the only one that's not put into the illusion is Davis. And then, Davis and Vmon and his forms are able to pull the others out of their illusions. And when they come back out of the illusions, MaloMyotismon is confused as to why this wasn't affecting Davis. And Davis explains, like, I'm a Digidestined. I got my friends. I got the Digimon. I'm fighting against you. What more could I want? And, it's like what, yeah, Davis has these other dreams and everything, but right here and right now is where he needs to be. And him and the other Digidestined are able to then digivolve their Digimon into like all of their different forms. He's got Vmon as X-Vmon, Flame Dramon, Raid Dramon. Doesn't have Magnamon. That would have been nice. That would have been very helpful in this battle. And then, him, and then Ken and him, have, Stingmon and X-Vmon, DNA Digivolve, and then they get all of their forms of Pale Dramon, and then Imperial Dramon Dragon Mode, and Imperial Dramon Fighter Mode, and then, like, the others are still, all digivolving their Digimon into their multiple forms as well, because they're tapped into the power of the dream world, and they're able to do that. And then, unfortunately, they then knock MaloMyotismon through, like, a wall of this dream world, and he lands in the digital world, because apparently that's the way that dimensions work. So if I find the wall of our dimension and I start banging away at it, am I eventually just gonna break my way through and, get into some other weird random dimension? How's that gonna work? Apparently in this case, that's the way that it works. And MaloMyotismon then lands in the digital world, and he's able to then feed on the darkness that's still there in the digital world. And he's also able to feed on the dark thoughts and the dark emotions from the Dark Spore children, and he's able to feed on that, and it just makes him grow bigger and bigger and stronger. He then uses his dark power to try to coat the real world, because up in the sky you can see the real world, and he tries to use his darkness power to cloak that in darkness, and he seems to be doing a pretty dang good job of it. And this is when, of course, the Digidestined all around the world are using their Digivices, the light from their Digivices, to fight through the darkness. And then, of course, they're transported to the digital world. And via Davis and the others convincing the Dark Spore children that, you need to focus on the good. You need to focus on what's your dreams and your aspirations and everything. And, like, as each of the kids say, oh, I want to be a baseball player, I want to be a baker, I want to be a teacher, I want to draw comics and everything, we see pieces of MaloMyotismon disappear, like, one of his legs, an arm, part of his torso, and he's just like a head with a chest, and then that vanishes, and then he's still like this dark energy, and he's trying to use, he's gonna like, well, he's very weakened by the lights from the Digivices. So when all of the Digidestined first appear from all around the world, they're using their light, and it hurts him. It causes him physical pain because he is, of course, kind of the representation of the embodiment of darkness. Yeah, we had Devimon. Yeah, we had the Dark Masters. Yeah, we had Edamon. But MaloMyotismon, he just he just seems to be more of the ultimate villain for the Digidestined up to this point. Not that the other evil Digimon that they've had to deal with over the years weren't powerful, because, Diaboromon and such was extremely powerful, as well were as the Dark Masters, of course, as I said. And, Blackboard Greymon, but Blackboard Greymon became an ally and such. But MaloMyotismon is kind of just this representation of this horrible evil, because he almost killed Kari. He killed Wizardmon. He was gonna kill Kari and Godamon. He almost devoured a ton of their parents along with a ton of the other people at the convention center. When he was MaloMyotismon, he's caused all of these problems for the Digidestined. And now he's just been this force in the background for the past however many years, messing with Ken, messing with Oikawa, and was going to use these Dark Spore Children just as a means to an end. And he's just so despicable. Yeah. And he's weakened by the light, and then of course he starts fading, and as the Dark Spore Children focus on the good. And then Imperial Dramon Fightermon then uses his fully charged Giga Crusher, which is charged by the power of all of the Digivices together, to finally destroy Myotismon's essence, obliterating him for good. So he's completely gone. So hopefully we never have to worry about Myotismon again. I'm sure at some point, if they need to, they can come up with a reason for why MaloMyotismon would be back, in all honesty. I'm kind of glad they didn't try to bring him back in regards to, Digimon Adventure Tri. I mean, it's like a memory of him is one thing, or like something that's like pretending to be Myotismon is one thing. But the actual Myotismon or Myotismon coming back, I don't think, I'm kind of glad they didn't do that in Digimon Adventure Tri. Because they wanted to have it be this kind of new, introduce some of these newer ones, but still have callbacks to the other stuff. But and this kind of implies, if you destroy a Digimon's data before it can be reborn, it will be destroyed completely. So, note to self: if the Dark Masters show back up again, how about you do that? So they may not be able to come back again. That might be helpful. I know in the games for Digimon, and like the actual video games, I don't know if you can actually get Myotismon or MaloMyotismon as your Digimon. That's not something that I've tried yet. I would assume that by a technicality you might be able to, but I don't know if that's something extremely doable in the game or not. At some point, because I have like one of the Digimon video games, the Digimon, what one is it? Digimon World, Next Order. You see that? There you go. Yeah, you can you can digivolve your Digimon into a lot of different things in this. I do not know if MaloMyotismon and MaloMyotismon and Myotismon himself is one of them or not. Because it's all based on like how you raise your Digimon, and then you get like, because like they keep being reborn and turning into Digi-Eggs again. I'm like, you could have at least let them last longer than what you do. So at some point, if I get to the point where I can do like a playthrough or something, maybe I'll do that, and maybe I'll see like do a playthrough. I just do, try to turn them into like darker evil, or Digimon that are usually considered on the evil side of things. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But for MaloMyotismon, that's about what we see. I was going to mention his attacks. He does, of course, have his Pandemonium Flame, which, fire, the description of it is, fires an extremely high temperature beam from the Sodom and Gomorrah. on his shoulders. So yeah, he's got two like extreme. He's got like two cannons on his arms, shoulders. He's got Howling Blood. I don't remember what that is. Crimson Mist, which is also again fired from the shoulders, and it's causes like acidic and mist and everything to fly out, so it causes a lot of pain that way. Mental illusion or mind illusion or so, which of course what he uses on the Digidestined. And then Screaming Darkness, which just releases just extremely high-pitched screaming waves of like darkness that just are supposed to cause fear. So we get some interesting stuff with that, with the Myotismon and MaloMyotismon. As I said, MaloMyotismon is not my favorite out of all the Digimon that they end up fighting against. I mean, he's definitely at least the most, Myotismon himself is probably the most cultured Digimon that they fought against, but Piedmon is also quite refined. They both seem to like their wine and everything. Although neither of them really have the best taste in fashion, but So that's what we have for MaloMyotismon. So now I'm going to go record about Arukenimon and Mummymon. So I thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye! No! This can't be happening! These pesky children can't make me disappear. I won't allow it!